Coming to you from Beaumont, this is your HouseCall.
My name is Jay Amin. I'm 19 years old. Just graduated a couple of years ago. Beginning of middle school, I couldn't find any terminology as to how I was feeling about my gender identity. Obviously, that wasn't the word I was thinking of back then, but I knew that something set me different from every other kid that was around me. I was kind of just stringing it along, trying to figure out who I am.
Hi, I'm Transgender Male. I'm a very proud mom of a wonderful 19-year-old son. I heard the word transgender for the first time in my life from my child. And I said, what is that? That was my first reaction.
Taking an action step to change my life started in high school. I had to reach out to, a number of therapists, a number of friends, asking them. Building a support system wasn't easy. Obviously judgment was just there.
This is not like somebody brainwashing my child. My child is going through stuff, and now I want to get on board and learn. Going through a couple of different therapists, we got to a gender specialist who actually educated us. It was a 2-hour appointment, and we walked out of his office after 4.5 hours. And the one action step that I took coming out of his office was I was going to change the pronouns to he. This one action item actually reduced Jay's anger level almost by 30% right away. We started going together and started learning stuff, parent support group, all that. And, that was really, I was just moving forward every day.
After a difficult few months of trying to understand and getting to know, this new side of me and figuring out this is who I truly am, fitting my own box, creating my own image, that's how I really came about it. So it's a little bit about my story.
That's pretty much how we got started, and it was like 4.5 years ago. And today we are at a very, very nice place.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome to the Beaumont HouseCall podcast. I'm Dr. Asha Shahjahan. Our goal is to help you and your family live smarter and healthier lives. Oftentimes, our LGBTQ community have unique medical questions, and we don't really know how to start the conversation. Many struggle with depression, face misplaced judgment by family and friends. In today's podcast, we're going to explore all of this and more. Joining us today is Ms. Transgender Male, a certified life mastery consultant, business and professional coach, and also an engineer, and her son, Jay Amin, a certified empowerment coach. And later on in today's podcast, we'll be talking to Dr. Maureen Kelly, Jay's pediatrician, and she'll be talking to us about her experience with Miss Gill and Jay. But first, we'll talk to Jay and his mom. Thank you guys both so much for being here today.
Thank you.
So we first met, right, at the diversity conference about 2 years ago. And I believe at that time, you guys were giving your story, and I was just in the audience, and I was just floored by the honesty and the depth of the information you were giving. And I remember standing up with a standing ovation, these guys are awesome. And I'm so excited that you guys are here today, because you both have been through very difficult but yet magnificent journeys, both together and individually. Ms. Gill, you noticed some unique characteristics about Jay at a young age. Can you speak about that, from a parent perspective, what was going on in your head?
At a young age, I remember, I do not remember a time when this child ever picked anything that was so-called a girl toy, that we label as girl and boy.
What age? Even as
even at 2 years old.
Wow. Okay.
I've got pictures where I have put a girl outfit on Jay. That's when he couldn't pick. I picked
Right.
and put it on, right? But even at 2.5, there was hand-down clothes and stuff from the older brother at home. So it was convenient, and the toys, all the girl toys that we had were because we wanted to buy them.
Right.
So it started very, very early. And then it was more like tomboy. It's a tomboy girl.
That's what you thought. You were
That's
like,
what
everyone goes through this stage.
Exactly. And,
Jay, did you really know what was going on? Or when did you start feeling or noticing that things were different?
I vividly remember I attended a private school in preschool, right down the street from my house. I actually recently tore it down. I remember we had uniforms there, right? Everyone was wearing the same thing. In the morning, my mom and dad, they'd put white shirt, blue pants, shoes, go to school. And I'd come home, and literally I vividly remember being about 4 or 5 years old.
Maybe even less.
Changing right into my brother's clothes. I had one older brother. I've got one older brother. All his hand-me-downs came to me.
Yeah.
Whatever wasn't was bought for a female. So I would quickly go. That's the first thing I remember doing is changing right into a pair of sweatpants and, a boy's T-shirt.
You were more comfortable in male clothes.
I was comfortable. Even the uniform, the girl's uniform, that feminine feature to it, anything feminine, I was so neglected towards too. I didn't want any part of it.
Yeah.
I felt like I was choosing teams, like I need to be a part of the right thing here. I need to feel correct. Like I need to feel okay. And wearing boys' clothes, hanging out with boys, just more masculine energy was the thing that allowed me to figure out that I was different. It wasn't just a feeling or a phase anymore.
You felt more comfortable and you felt like you fit in more with the males. But did you feel like the people around you looked at you funny for that?
Growing up, yes. In middle school is when it started. In middle school, it was more I didn't fit with the things that were going on in everyone else's life. I had people that started dating in middle school, people that, would pick friends, and, there's a lot of kids drama and stuff like that in middle school. So people are choosing friends, and when they were choosing friends, I noticed they weren't choosing me. I knew why. Subconsciously as a kid, why. I feel like it was more, I don't want to deal with the things that this kid is going to have to deal with. I don't want to be by his side. I don't want to get laughed at with him. You know what I mean?
And that must have been feeling really isolating.
It was a bad feeling.
Yeah.
I knew that I had to be alone for a little while to figure out what I really truly needed. So yeah, that was just a little bit about the feeling of isolation in middle school. That was most important. That was a key factor to who I am today, because I wouldn't have real friends. You know what I mean? I wouldn't have people that actually genuinely support me.
Or who you felt comfortable confiding in.
Exactly.
So the process of transitioning for both of you. So you said there's a lot of checks and balances that have to happen before an actual transition process can occur. What's like for someone who's not experienced that, I'm like, okay, what does transition mean? So that means you were born a female and now you're transitioning to being a male, or if you're a male, you're transitioning to be a female. Am I correct?
Yeah.
It's not always. Transgender does not mean they have to transition to the other body, like a boy to a girl or girl to a boy. Transgender is an umbrella.
Okay.
There's a lot of people who feel certain way. Their mannerism may be that way. They may choose not to go through any medical transition.
Okay.
And that's okay.
Yeah,
Right.
and that's okay. That's why everybody's journey is different.
Sure.
I support transitioning at a younger age. I feel like it would have benefited me more. I still transitioned at a very young age. Don't get me wrong, I was 16, and that's about the age, puberty starts and people are growing up anyways. It was a very smooth transition for me. I'm very blessed for that. A lot of people don't get that advantage. They don't get the chance. The chance wasn't given to them. They have other things that are going on that are, not allowing them to start a transition. But I feel that you can take it a slower process. You don't have to dive right into anything medically. And also you don't have to medically transition all the time.
I have seen parents who have held up the transitioning process for their child just because they're not ready. And sometimes they can sit on it for a long time, which actually just, makes things worse.
Yeah,
So,
well, I would imagine there'd be a lot of family conflict. Like, what if one
Right.
family member's on board, the other's not?
that's a very, very good, very important point.
Yeah.
Because me being a single parent, although, we were both, like, Jay's father was in the picture too, and he supported at a different level, I supported at a different level.
Yeah.
But absolutely, in families, that is always a big issue.
There's always family dynamics for anything.
Right,
But
right.
like something such as, either having a procedure done or, questioning your full identity is huge.
Yeah.
Right.
And I also wonder from like a parental perspective, when Jay came to you, I mean, was it a gradual process for you to get on board? I mean, it sounds like everything was pretty smooth, but I don't imagine it to really be that way.
No.
Like,
No.
Nothing
was perfect about this.
Actually, I do remember telling Jay, you know what? No, first of all, like I said,
Yeah.
you know what? Somebody is brainwashing. There's an external force that's kind of like pushing my
I think
child a
most
certain way.
parents do that when things are out of the so-called quote-unquote
Yeah.
norm.
And I can tell you that I also thought that, Jay thinks that maybe being a male is more powerful. Okay, because we had gone through some family drama.
Yeah.
And I thought maybe that's what is in his head, to be a male, because he thinks that he's going to be more stronger. And so a lot of these type of concerns went through my head. But I told him, and we were just talking about it on our way over here, and said, you know what, give me about 4 months. And I'm like, what am I going to do in 4 months? I'm going to do my research. I'm going to pray. Okay, whether, this whole way of thinking should go away.
Yeah.
I need to seek prayers, or guidance.
Yeah, a lot of parents would probably do
Yeah.
that or say,
Yeah.
let's wait it out. Maybe
Yeah.
you'll change your mind.
But
And-
definitely it took me, I would say a couple of months to
Okay.
really get to a gender specialist.
Okay.
2 to 3 months.
And then when you guys first started off, was it with your pediatrician or who helped you the most, you think, from a physician standpoint in this process?
My pediatrician played a big role. I feel she encouraged me to talk about it with my parents. And one of the main key factors that was most important was my mom allowing her to speak to me alone in private and having trust with my pediatrician that, she is out to help. She's not going to harm this child in any way or make my life difficult or anything like that.
You know what? That is a very important point for parents out there, because you want to co-create things and co-solve things with the pediatrician.
Right.
It's your child. Yeah, he's a minor. I could say, I don't want you to talk to my child alone. I could be controlling. I wasn't one of those controlling parents. And I'm very grateful for that, because that allowed us to get help. That allowed that pediatrician to actually work with my child.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And took the time. That doctor, that's a key thing too, where the doctor took the time. She says some people are just, blow dry, and some people are just haircut or something like that. She
Some people are
says.
blow dry, some people
Where,
are color.
some kids need more time.
Yeah.
I'm not just going to do this quickly and move on to the next.
So this is a great time to break away and talk to Dr. Maureen Kelly, Jay's pediatrician. So Dr. Kelly, thank you so much for being here today.
My pleasure.
For our listeners, there's a lot of confusion around the term LGBTQ, and particularly in this podcast, we're talking about transgender. Like, what does it actually mean to be transgender? What's the standard definition?
The standard definition is when an individual identifies with a gender that is different than the one they were assigned at birth.
Okay. So you're a girl at birth, but you feel that you're a boy, or can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Sure, if you were born female at birth and you identify as being male, you would be considered a transgender male, versus if you a transgender female would be someone who's born male with male genitalia at birth and internally feels they identify as a female.
And how common is this? Like, are you seeing a lot of transgenders in your practice, or do you feel like in the conferences that you're going to that are pediatric that this is becoming more common?
Probably not becoming more common. It's probably just becoming, there's more awareness. In my practice, I'm up to 6 transgender patients, which I think compared to most practices is more only because there's a big network in the LGBTQ community, and through different support groups, resources are given to individuals. And, me being a pediatrician that has some experience with it, I get more referrals from that community.
So let's talk about one of your patients, Jay. So it seems like Jay was able to really confide in you, and you were basically a hero for him. Can you talk about how did that process happen? Did he approach you? Did you identify it in him? How did that play out?
When I first met Jay, I was initially struck by his presentation being more stereotypically male in terms of how he dressed, in his voice, in his mannerisms, his grooming.
How old was he when you saw him?
At this time, I think he was about 13. When I talk to adolescents, I try to cover the gamut in terms of how they're doing in terms of school. We also hit some hard subjects like anxiety, depression, drugs, sexuality, sexual activity. And, I try to also talk to them alone. And when I was talking to Jay, I sensed that he wasn't really happy between his ears. Mm-hmm. And I asked his mom if I could have some time with him, and she was great and said yes. And, I really just told him, how he impressed me in terms of appearing to have a lot of masculine features in his actions and in his looks. And I asked him if he had any questions or if he knew what his sexuality was or what gender he identified with. And then in talking with him further, I sensed that a big weight had been lifted off his shoulders, that he was just able to, to talk about it. I then talked to him about bringing his mom into the equation and letting her know, and he wasn't ready for that initially.
Okay.
So I talked to him about having some anxiety and depression regarding this. His grades were dropping. He was getting involved in some behaviors that were concerning, and so his mom was willing to have him see a counselor. So we started there with a definite follow-up visit, to be scheduled so that we could look into this further and see at what time he was comfortable, talking about it more and maybe including his family.
So Jay's mom is just fantastic. Like, she's been so supportive of Jay. What was it like working with her?
She's really an amazing individual, and she personifies what it means to have unconditional love for a child. I have not really experienced any mom like her in my practice. When Jay was willing to have both of us sit down with her and discuss the topic of gender dysphoria and where he was coming from, she just jumped right in. She really didn't know anything about the subject. She didn't really, I think, understand even that it existed. But her first response is, what can I do? How can I help? And she just dove in with both feet. She read as much as she could. She went to support groups. She did everything she could possibly do to help her child.
Yeah, she's made such a huge difference in Jay's life, but now she's making such a huge difference in so many people's lives. Can you kind of go through the steps of which doctors should be seen? Do you have them always see a therapist and a counselor? When do you have them see a psychiatrist if that's necessary? And do they see an endocrinologist or a transgender specialist? Like those kinds of things, like what are the steps of, or are there, defined steps of you do this first and then this and then that?
You really need a good therapist, not only for the patient, but there are a lot of kids whose parents are having difficulty with this or may not get on the same page with the child. So you need really mental health people to get that lined up in place and have the conversations. And then as time goes on, you're going to have to, it's really getting endocrinology involved, getting social work involved in many cases. And then the primary care physician's role is to kind of coordinate this care.
How do you know that a child is ready to transition? Or there's this argument that like they're too young to even know who they are, or like teens are so confused. Being a teenager is just a confusing time in general. So it's like how a lot of argument comes back as like, how do you as a pediatrician know that this child is ready to transition?
Well, I think you have to let the child lead you in a sense and lead their families, especially when they're younger, to allow them to experience who they feel they are and the way they want to do so. And then as time goes on, what studies show is as they hit that pre-pubertal age, if this feeling intensifies, especially as they hit puberty, that the likelihood that they're going to not want to move forward is very small.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The other thing I wanted to talk about was suicide. Like suicide is a real issue in this population. Have you ever seen any of your own patients or dealt with people who are having trouble with the bullying? And maybe let's say they've come to you and they've decided they want to transition, but it's not going so smoothly. Like maybe the school system is not so supportive, families not so supportive.
Yes. There's an extremely high amount of suicide in general, the LGBTQ community. It's more than 50% compared to other youth. And then within that, the transgender youth have a 13% more increased risk of suicide. And almost every adolescent transgender youth I've spoken to have had thoughts of suicide or have done some self-harm. And so it's really important that that's addressed because there's a tremendous amount of bullying. Not everybody comes from a supportive, unconditional love situation that Jay had with his mom. And a lot of these kids end up homeless. A lot of the bullying is severe where then they drop out of school, so then they don't have access to an education. And then they're at risk for selling themselves sexually on the street and prostitution and getting diseases. And so it's really important how healthcare professionals treat transgender individuals because they're hesitant to, really utilize medical services because of the fear of how they're going to be treated.
Yeah. And also, I think there's a couple studies that reported that not only is there a fear of how you're treated, but also the fear that your provider is not knowledgeable enough about your condition. So how can we better educate physicians when it comes to helping transgender patients?
I think the training has to start in medical school and with residents. And even in talking to some of the residents at Beaumont that come from cultures where being anything within the LGBTQ community in their country is unlawful. And that is sometimes hard for them to accept as they're, listening to even some of our talks. And I've actually spoken to a couple residents regarding this. And my point to them is that as a provider, it's not about you or your culture or your beliefs. It's your job is to make sure that your patient is happy between their ears and that you are not trying to fix something that's not broken.
Yeah.
And it's okay if you, as a human being, can't do that, but then you need to make sure you find someone who can.
Right. It's our job to take care of our patients, regardless of what the situation may be. What are some questions you can ask a provider to see if they're the right fit for you in terms of transgender care?
I would directly ask the provider if their experience with treating individuals with gender dysphoria and if they have resources available to treat their child and to coordinate care with gender specialists, mental health providers, schools, and any issues that may arise to help make sure that this child is supported and can transition under their care with, their support.
Yeah, it sounds like collaboration is the key. So any last advice that you have for our listeners today?
I think it's just acceptance, compassion, and for providers to take time with their patients. You know, we're in an era where providers are graded by how quickly they close their medical records and how quickly they get a patient in and out of their office. And it really should be the opposite, because if you don't take time, these individuals will be missed. And because of the high suicide rate, it's a really, really important thing to take time with these individuals, because you could save a life.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Kelly.
Thanks for having me.
Both of you, you're from India, correct?
Yes.
How do you think culture played a role in your support of your son?
Actually, you know what? I can tell you that I carry a lot of Indian values, and I'm very proud of my culture and where I come from. I come from a state of Punjab, and
Really yummy food, by the way, just saying.
but at the same time, I don't agree with everything one culture has to offer.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm in this country. I'm very blessed to be here, and I grew up in Africa. So I am very, open-minded that way, but grew up very conservative.
Okay.
Okay. So when Jay came out, the first thing in my mind wasn't about the culture.
Yeah.
It wasn't about the family. It wasn't about being Indian or nothing. It was about my child. It was about the mental health of this child. I wanted my child happy. I wanted to help fix this problem that was in front of us. The problem of confusion. Now, what is it going on? What do we need to do, So after I got a little bit around it, then I started to tell our close family and friends one at a time.
Yeah.
I wasn't worried about the religious places. I wasn't worried about my extended family. Nothing. My father lives with us, and he's about 80 years old.
Yeah.
I had to educate him on the side.
Yeah, that I want to hear
And,
about. That's your grandfather, right?
yeah.
He's Team J. He's
He's
Team J all the
J.
way.
That's awesome.
And
To
he's
me-
always been.
To me,
That's
as a
awesome.
parent, it is only about how you paint the picture about your child. If
that.
I had gone to somebody and says, oh my gosh, now what do I do? My child has come out transgender. Oh my God. You know what?
Yeah.
Okay, look at that versus my child came out as transgender. I'm learning. This is what it takes. I want to send you a video or two to educate you.
That's awesome. I
And you
love
know
that.
what? Ask me more questions so that's how I painted the picture, because I wanted to move forward and support my child.
It's how you paint the picture. I
It's
love
how
that.
you paint the picture.
Absolutely. Can we talk just a little bit about the actual transition process?
So a little bit about the hormones. It's a weekly process. You have to do it your whole life. It's okay. It's something I've come to terms with.
Yeah. Was that scary for you when
It
you
was.
first had to start that?
It was. I was always really afraid of injections.
Yeah.
So I was always really afraid of anything medical. I didn't like the doctor or anything like that. But
It's the outcome of it.
it's the outcome of it. It's how she explained it to me. It's how comfortable she made me feel, how masculine she made me feel, how normal she made me feel, per se.
Yeah.
Because when speaking about normal, I'm talking everyone else and what they're thinking, society's norm. So, with hormones, all that happens is your testosterone goes up. There's a lot of mythology and negative review about the hormone treatment while transitioning. But, I didn't have any side effects. Blessed that I didn't have any side effects. There are side effects that, I've seen a lot of people go through, even, side effects from surgery. But these are things that happen in every medical
Right.
standpoint.
Anytime you take a medication, there could be a side effect. Anytime you
Exactly.
have a surgical procedure, there could be a side effect. But when you were going through that, let's say taking the testosterone and noticing that your voice was getting deeper,
Right.
how did that feel for you?
Very cool. Very, very cool. I had to record a couple months.
Were you like, this is me?
This is me.
Yeah.
These are small things that kind of make you who you are as whole when you're in my position. If you're identifying with transgender, when you finally get to that transitional period and you're feeling one with your body, it's kind of like when you get in the gym and you're finally getting results. Like, this feels great.
Right.
So Yeah.
You know what? Actually, I had seen the effect of him being on the testosterone.
Yeah. And what did you
And-
see? Did you see like a new child altogether?
Yes,
Like,
I saw every day or every so often, because I saw him every day, we were living together, is I saw the progression of like just blossoming into more happier person.
Yeah.
You know? And of course, I wasn't just buying the testosterone off the street.
Right,
It was through
exactly.
a doctor.
Yeah.
And so to me, I wasn't questioning too much. At the same time, I was educating myself. I wasn't blindly going through it. But I could see that my child is happier. You know, there's a more, light in this child, you know.
right.
And of course, looking at other people's stories and support group and all that helped me too.
It sounds like, did you go through therapy yourself? Like,
No, I didn't go through therapy myself, mainly because I wasn't hitting myself like, oh my gosh. I wasn't going into depression like what has happened.
Yeah.
I was evolving with what was going on.
but did you guys do family therapy about the process? And
She
all of
joined
it?
me a lot of
joined
times.
me,
Yes.
yeah, with his gender specialist.
Yes.
I was totally in touch with him.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you were pretty well supported, by mom, and then you said, Team J with grandpa.
Yeah.
But who else supported you? And then also, like, who didn't really support you? Were there
Right.
friends in school?
Of course. I think this is where support versus tolerance comes into play, because anyone can tolerate. Anyone has the power to tolerate. Anyone has the power to sit there and say, yes, I accept you. No, I don't judge you. No, I don't, I don't care.
Right.
I've heard
It's not my
that plenty
business.
of times.
Yeah.
I don't care. That's
You
not
do
my
what you
business.
need to do.
You do you.
Yeah.
I'm not judging you.
Right.
That's tolerance. When you're an important person in my life, I've had a lot of significant people that I was seeing and talking to every day that distanced themselves away from me when I started transitioning because they were afraid of what I was going to go through. They didn't want to be seen with it. But I'm going to take my dad, for example, just because he's a person that did tolerate. And in a lot of aspects, he did support.
Okay.
But when it came down to transitioning, he was fearful of what his side of the family might have thought. He kept those things from them. He didn't think that it would be as important to say.
So it was like a family secret.
It's like a family secret.
Okay.
And I had to detach myself, away from those people and away from that, because that in itself could be traumatizing to my transition that I was also carefully containing and
Yeah.
trying to maintain for myself so that, I grow up to be what I want to be.
And then it's so important that you had that insight.
Yeah.
Many of us care so much about fitting into society, and people will repress who they are. It's like people are afraid to come out sometimes. People are afraid to say their sexual orientation. I've known so many people that have gotten married, and that's not what they wanted. But because of society, that's what they do. So it's so valuable that at such a young age you were able to understand that and have that insight, and then also to be able to kind of understand that, okay, yeah, my dad, he's not stopping me, but he's not 100%.
He's not
all
with
in.
me like I thought he would be. And I had to not expect as much from everyone else as I was expecting from myself. Thank you so much for saying that I was strong enough to do that. I feel like it was the support that I was getting, and focusing more on the support that you are getting rather than focusing on who isn't supporting you
Right.
and benefiting you is most important, especially in a transition like this, because there's many different transitions that we all go through in life. But transitioning my gender was really important. It was really important for me to have seriously supportive people around me. And I was
Probably
noticing
weed out friends real easy.
I weed out friends like that, but family members, it was a little bit more difficult to adjust
Yeah.
to, my father not being there and not supporting me, eventually just kind of distancing himself away from the whole subject in a whole. So
Yeah. It's like that whole concept of like, if you're not really taking time to understand the situation at hand, a lot of times people fear it and they just kind of, it's a natural response to kind of distance. And so I think that's a good lesson for our listeners, that if you're trying to support someone through a transition process, as a friend, a family member, whoever, really think about, are you practicing tolerance or are you practicing support? I think I love the way that you said that.
Thanks so much.
If I can say one thing, Jay has an older brother. As soon as we found out that, okay, this is what's going on with Jay,
Yeah.
it didn't take him much time to get his head around it, and he's fully supportive.
Yeah, I was going to ask that.
We all had
Yeah,
to
I'll
learn
get
it.
there.
what was your brother like? All of a sudden he's like, I've got a younger brother now.
Yeah,
Like-
I got a younger brother now.
Yeah.
So he started off like being my biggest bully growing up.
Yeah.
Okay. And he was confused just like I was. No, I give him credit every day for having my back. I don't think he'll ever let anyone disrespect me or talk down about me. He used to get angry that other people would say things to him, about me, and that's expected.
Yeah. Did he get bullied about you?
I'm sure.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
sure.
It's like a lot of times we forget that bullying doesn't only happen to the person, but to
Right.
family members too.
I'm sure. I'm sure he's had his share in rough times as far as people coming up to him. And, we live in a very bubble area.
Mm-hmm.
Our high school, our high school community, our friends, we all know each other.
It's a small community.
Yeah, Bloomfield Hills. It's all,
Yeah.
everyone's there. So when I did end up transitioning, when I did come out to him, it was kind of in a fight. Like, it was kind of in an angry setting. I was like, he had to really take, I think it took him a month or two. But when he did learn, I think he had people in his life. I think he had a girlfriend at the time that was telling him more education, more information, saying, well, yeah, you need to be nicer. Like, this exists. Like, you could play a big role. And I think he started assuming that role quickly.
Yeah.
And so I give him a lot of credit for that, because it's not easy to be, it's not easy to go through something when you feel like, I don't have anything to do with this. Why is it happening to me?
Right.
Yeah,
Transitioning is not only for the person.
it's for everyone
It's
around
for
him.
every person
That's
around
touched
him.
by that
Yes,
person.
Yes. So I had to go through my transitioning or going through.
Yeah.
Older brother had to go through. So everybody had to go through transitioning.
Go through something. In terms of like the LGBTQ community, and I know you're talking more from the transgender perspective, but we know, like as a medical provider, I know that suicide is a real risk with this population.
Yeah.
Many people start feeling suicidal because of the relentless bullying and the family rejection, which you spoke a little bit about.
Right.
Preventing suicide and enhancing resilience is like one of the critical steps, I think, from a healthcare perspective, at least my role as a doctor and what we're trying to teach the medical community. I think, we talked a little bit and you had mentioned that there was a point where you told your mother, I don't feel like living.
Yeah.
What was that like? And what would you say to others who are going through severe depression?
The phrase, I don't feel like living, that was something I woke up with every day.
Oh, wow.
That was something I struggled with every single day, and that, not necessarily suicide for me, but just not seeing purpose. Everyone else was figuring out where do I want to go to school, I want to join this club and join that, and I'm like, I don't see a purpose in anything.
Wow, yeah.
This body is uncomfortable to be in. I literally don't want to do it.
Yeah.
It was difficult. It was scary. I think even for my mom, it was even more scary because she's like, what's going on?
In some of the research, it does show that parental acceptance has significantly reduced suicides.
Oh, yeah.
And suicide attempts. And so I think that you're lucky in that sense that you had your mother to support you. And then just having that acceptance factor. I think many parents who are out there struggling with, I don't know what's going on with my child. And the more resistance is leading to more depression. And so just having that parental acceptance can save your child's life.
Yes, parental acceptance is the first thing this child is looking at the parents, because child is born and then ever since they are a baby, they're just looking at the parents, say yes, no, oh, good job, whatever. And that's where the journey starts,
And my mom did save my life. I'm going to say that off bat. She did save my life. My support system did save my life. I would not be here today without them and without it happening as soon as it did. I think, if I did go along tolerating this, then I would have, transitioned when I got older, and I don't think I would have followed through. Like, yeah. I just don't.
I don't think he would have gotten through high school even.
No, wow. I wouldn't have graduated. I wasn't going to school. I wasn't seeing any purpose. I didn't want to care about my grades, nothing. So.
But now you have graduated.
Yeah, it's
right?
crazy what
are you guys doing now? Like you're like an activist, you're a certified empowerment coach. I think you both are writing books.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes.
None of this would have happened if I couldn't be one with myself and be who I truly am. I think even if the medical transition didn't happen, I'm blessed that it has.
Yeah.
But I think if it didn't, a social transition can be as much as, that. The way people treat you have nothing to do with, what you see in the mirror.
Yeah.
If you have the right support, you do anything.
And again, it is different for every person.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. I believe you both live so fearlessly, and you
Thanks
are
so
such
much.
great examples. I mean, I could talk to you guys forever. I could just do this.
Thanks
just
so
love
much.
learning from both of you, and you guys are such great heroes to so many people. For our listeners, are there any resources or groups that really helped you that would be helpful for them? I think you mentioned that there was a Stand with Trans group.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm on board with Stand with Trans. I'm
Okay.
a board member, and that association has really helped me. They do a lot of work for trans youth and their their families, parents and families. So standwithtrans.org is a great resource.
Okay.
I also support a group called Desi Rainbow Parents.
Okay.
It's out of New Jersey. It's actually for the South Asian community, for LGBT and their families. So I support them too. And really, I'm open to anybody who wants to talk or get more information and do the support. Right now, I'm facilitating a support group right here at Beaumont, and that's to Stand with Trans as well.
How
That's once a month.
often is that group?
That's once a month, second Wednesday of every month from 7 to 8:30 at Royal Oak.
Beaumont Royal Oak.
Yeah.
And then Jay, you've done even a couple videos,
Yeah.
and I know that I've participated in the physician educational video for trying to educate physicians a little bit more here at Beaumont. Are there any resources that you'd like to share with people for learning more about what it means to be transgender?
Social media was one thing for me that really helped me, and support groups, to get into support groups early.
Yeah.
It's literally support. So you will meet people that go through exactly what you go through and will fit the box and will be able to help you navigate. Doing it alone is just draining.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many resources out there. Well, we were pretty much out of time, but is there just one last thing that you'd want to share with our listeners?
Yeah, I just want to say to the parents, this is your child, okay? Your child needs your unconditional love and support. That's all that child needs. So educate yourself and support your child.
Great. Jay?
You choose the life you truly want to live. Something I learned in Dream Builder,
Love that.
something I live by every day now. You choose. You make the choice.
Well, thank you guys so much, Tajinder and Jay, for being so open and so honest. And really, you both are so inspiring.
Thank you so much.
My deepest love and gratitude to both of you, and I'm excited to see what the future holds. I expect an autographed copy of both of your books.
Thanks so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
And as you said, it just takes one story to make a difference, and I think your story has really helped many people
Yes.
today.
Yes.
I appreciate it so much.
Thank you.
I also want to thank Dr. Kelly for being here today and sharing her medical expertise. Don't forget, podcast listeners, we're working on future Beaumont HouseCall podcasts. So some podcasts that you might be interested in that are related to this topic are the Bullying podcast. We have a podcast coming up on anxiety and also depression and suicide awareness. We also want to remind you to send along any questions or suggestions to podcast@beaumont.org. In the future, we'll be answering our mailbag. Till the next time, thanks for joining us on the Beaumont House Call. We leave you today with this healthy thought. We heard so much about what it's like to be a parent and a person going through transition. I think the biggest lesson I learned from Jay and Tajinder today is that as a person, you live, you feel, you love, you laugh, you're human. We just need to accept each other as we are. We all just want to be accepted. There's a lot of misconceptions about what it means to be transgender. And I think Jay and Tajinder did a really great job showing us what it's like to be on the other side. From a misunderstood child to a concerned parent. It's so easy to pass judgment on things we don't understand. There are many people who are suffering in silence. And if you're one of them, just as Jay told us, he reached out to his doctor who was able to help him. And your doctor could also help you too. Tejinder and Jay have inspired me, and I'm sure they've inspired you as well. In any struggle in your life, it isn't necessarily about the story, but it's how the story is told.
Continue your journey to living a smarter, healthier life. Visit beaumont.org/podcast to access information and resources related to today's podcast.